Want to help the channel? Go to shopclownfish.com where you can check out official Clownfish TV merchandise in our brand new shop. It helps us out. Also, check us out on Facebook, facebook.com/clownfishtv for more art and gaming live streams that we don't do on YouTube. We want to see you over there as well. Now let's get into the video. Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Kneon. I'm going to do an update on The Last of Us Part 2 because now the media is calling out that this game is basically the Last Jedi of video games. That in attempting to subvert your expectations, it has split the fandom down the middle. It has become incredibly divisive. Then we're going to talk about how Neil Druckmann had a much better story planned for The Last of Us Part 2, but he settled on the story he gave fans, and for some reason I want to talk about this first. There's going to be a reality show based on The Sims. Squid King told me about it earlier. I'm like, what the frick? And yeah, this is a real thing, and this just shows how important gaming is to Hollywood right now. How important gaming has become. It's, again, anytime a hobby, anytime kind of a niche thing goes mainstream, goes Hollywood, and gaming has always been quasi-mainstream, but anytime Hollywood gets involved, it usually winds up turning into a dumpster fire. And this is kind of what happened with comics, in my opinion, that Hollywood got involved. This is what happened with tabletop gaming, in my opinion, that Hollywood got involved. And we're seeing it now with anime, and now they're coming for gaming because they're looking for IP to strip mine. But what they do is they often bring their Hollywood sensibilities, their Hollywood politics, to a very niche kind of a thing, and alienate and push out the core fans in the attempt to go more mainstream. So this article on Television Business International talks about The Sims and how big gaming has become, but they get to the very bottom here, and this is why The Last of Us Part 2 is such a big deal. Really, it said, gaming has become an increasingly visited source of IP for producers and streamers and networks, with Amazon Studios recently confirming a reboot of the long-running Fallout franchise for TV. Somehow I missed that. And they're also doing a Last of Us TV show for HBO. The medium is also being explored more widely by TV execs, with hit franchise Fortnite recently striking a deal with Warner Media to test a new feature dubbed Movie Night, allowing players to watch Christopher Nolan films including Inception, Batman Begins, and The Prestige from within the game. That's kind of dumb. Yeah, I mean, look, we know that this is a thing because we saw Disney doing it with The Rise of Skywalker, again talking Star Wars, that they announced Palpatine's return via Fortnite. But everybody's strip mining video games for movie IP, and Hollywood is getting involved, and this is again what's going on with anime and animation. Hollywood is getting involved. What happened with tabletop, once we had a bunch of celebrities playing Dungeons and Dragons, things came off the rails. And this is why The Last of Us Part 2 is so important, because this game is a pop culture talking point this year. That it is going to be widely discussed because it is one of, if not the biggest game releases of the year, one of the most anticipated video games of all time, a follow-up to a beloved classic that people have been looking forward to for years, and they were let down hard. A lot of fans were let down hard. So now we've got Hypebeast putting out this article. What does a game owe to its player? The Last of Us Part 2 subverted expectations of its fans. Is that a good thing? Again, we're talking Last Jedi. Neil Druckmann thinks he's making an art house film. He's making a video game, but he thinks he's making an art house film. And with the lines between Hollywood and gaming blurring every day, he basically is, I guess, at this point, right? You're basically playing through Neil Druckmann's movie. For a release to find a markedly different reaction from critics and audiences is nothing new. They're talking about the backlash from YouTubers and gamers. Paul Feig's 2016 Ghostbusters remake and Rian Johnson's The Last Jedi were particularly explosive examples of such a dissonance. So we're comparing The Last of Us Part 2 to Ghostbusters 2016 and The Last Jedi. Those are not good comparisons. There is more broadly little room for meh in modern culture. The response to almost every tentpole release involves righteous fury. Righteous fury from fans who feel their beloved franchises have been mishandled. Last year's petition to rewrite the ending of Game of Thrones garnered over 1 million signatures. Viewers are still arguing about The Rise of Skywalker on Twitter 6 months after its release. We have not watched it. I don't know if I'm ever going to watch it. I have to think about it. And the Snyder versus Whedon debate surrounding Justice League shows little sign of abating. Well, especially since, those toxic fanboys got what they wanted and they're getting a Snyder cut. The conversation surrounding The Last of Us Part 2 is something different by any other standard. The extreme disparity in its reception since launching is unlike almost any other release. Depending on who you listen to, it's either one of this generation's best games or actual garbage. It's a 10 out of 10 or thrown into question the entire purpose of gaming criticism. There is no gray area. So they talk about the first game and how beloved it was. It sold 17 million copies. HBO is doing a series. Then they say the sequel turns all of this upside down. In the game's prologue, Joel is abruptly and gruesomely murdered by a new character, Abby, while Ellie is forced to watch. What follows looks to be a typical revenge narrative. Ellie sets off on a journey to find and kill Abby, and the player, as Ellie, will help her accomplish this. But halfway through, the perspective switches, and the player is forced to play through the most of the remainder of the game as Abby herself. The character we have been led to hate is suddenly one we're forced to inhabit as we retread previous plot points from the perspective of the villain. It's a narrative flip that has caused incendiary outrage among some players while being heralded by others as a stroke of genius. It's an art house film. Video games are being held hostage by their preconceptions of what the fans want. Many felt that Game of Thrones' sharp decline in its later season was due to an increasing awareness of fan expectations. Keeping audiences happy meant that certain characters couldn't be killed off, in contrast to the brutal, shocking killing of seemingly central characters that was once the show's hallmark. That wasn't really the problem people had. They had a lot of problems with it, but that wasn't it. They're talking about the gamble that was The Last of Us Part 2 to make the game unfun. They said they wanted to make the game unfun and make it dark and make you think. Again, this feels more like an art house film than a video game. For some, the gamble didn't pay off. For YouTube gaming reviewer Upper Echelon, it fell flat. His review of the game is titled Masterpiece? Absolutely not. For him, the game, in an effort to do something unexpected with the narrative, jettisoned any enjoyment for the player. The buzzword they always use is subverting expectations, he said, but if the expectation is positive and you subvert that, doesn't it just make it bad? Subverting the expectation that the game will have a meaningful, satisfying storyline just doesn't add up to me. Same with The Last Jedi. People were like, yeah, we're finally going to get to see Luke Skywalker as a Jedi, and nope, we get to see him as a sad sack. And by the way, here's a bunch of new characters you don't care about, kind of replacing beloved characters or talking down to characters we just introduced in the last movie just to troll the audience. That's what this is about. It's about trolling the audience. The game is obsessed with making you, the player, as uncomfortable as possible. Yeah, I've watched Let's Plays. I'm not buying it. I don't want to pay $60 to be depressed. I mean, hell no. With everything going on in the world right now, that's not what I want to see. So here, Rasputin, a YouTuber known for his thoughtful, mediative takes on gaming, agrees. There were moments playing The Last of Us Part 2 where I was tired, I was done. I didn't want to keep experiencing it. Frankly, if you're not exhausted by the end of the game, I think you're missing the experience. But I think there's a place for that. It's just not something that we're used to seeing in major games, so many of them end up appealing to the lowest common denominator. If you didn't enjoy this game, maybe you're just not smart enough. You're not smart enough to enjoy it. For him, the phrase subverting expectations has become heavily loaded. It became dirty after The Last Jedi. Now, when a lot of fans hear it, they instantly assume it's going to mean that the story they love is going to suffer. I think there's a nuance that's been lost. Subverting audience expectations is a device, and it can be used well or used poorly. He said that I don't think the story developer or the developer owes a story beat to any fans. He said if fans were the best storytellers, they'd be the narrative leads in studios. I feel like a lot of the criticism is coming from people who don't write, and their take of what good writing is not super informed. The game's challenges aren't a flaw. They are a deliberate extension of its themes. This game has caused actual grief for people. Like I said, I don't want to pay $60 to be depressed. It's very divisive, it's very polarizing, and we're going to see this comparison, especially as games and movies mesh together. Hollywood is going to mingle all this stuff together, and they're going to drag anime into it. They've already dragged tabletop gaming into it. Again, I think, the point where, I've been talking about Wizards of the Coast and Dungeons and Dragons and how I really yearn for role-playing games to be the way they were 10 or 15 years ago. But the common denominator for all of the, breaks, fractures in pop culture, from my point of view, is when Hollywood got involved. Even Star Wars, huge moneymakers, but George Lucas existed kind of outside of the Hollywood system. Comics were sort of off the radar until superhero movies became big business, and then Hollywood got involved. Tabletop gaming. Once celebrities took to tabletop gaming, all hell broke loose, and now it's very, very weirdly political. And now, gaming is going to be strip mined, and this has been going on for years. But if you're asking my opinion of why pop culture is so divisive, again, you look at The Last Jedi. That was created to be an art house film in Rian Johnson's mind, right? To subvert fan expectations. We have people in charge of franchises who seem to hate the fans. They don't think the fans should win. It's almost like, we want your money, but we don't need your approval. We just want your money. Now, kind of a side note here, Collider put an article out. They were talking about this podcast, the official Last of Us podcast, and they talked about the story arc that Neil Druckmann had originally, which was Ellie going on a journey to find another one like her, another person who was immune. And they ditched that for the depressing game that they gave fans. And I have to wonder if there wasn't another treatment of Star Wars Episode 8 out there as well. They're going to learn. They're going to learn, financially. The only way these companies are going to learn is if you don't financially support them. But The Last of Us Part 2 has already sold a ton of copies. I know a lot of copies are being returned, a lot of copies are not being sold, but it's made money. I don't know how much money it has to make to be called a success. I know Asia hasn't really taken to it. There's tons and tons and tons of Last of Us 2 sitting out there. But this is going to go on for years. You go out and you just do a Google search for Last of Us 2. And that's, tons of articles every day. This game's been out for a couple weeks already. I would think it would be over, but no, it's become another battleground. Us versus them, unfortunately. Us being fandom, them being the studios, sort of battling for the soul of video games. Like they did it for Star Wars, and they did it for gaming, tabletop gaming. It's gonna come for anime too, I have no doubt. It's already started. And, what's going to happen is, again, the fans are just going to have to speak with their wallets. If they're not happy with this kind of entertainment, then don't buy it. That's the only thing. At the end of the day, these studios can make whatever they want to make, but if nobody's buying it, eventually they'll stop making it, because the free market always wins out. So I'm going to wrap this one up. Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, and we'll talk later. Hey guys, thanks for watching Clownfish TV. Please consider supporting the channel. Go to clownfishsupport.com. That's clownfishsupport.com. And if you want to join our community, go to clownfishtalk.com. That's clownfishtalk.com. Please subscribe, ring the bell for notifications. We will talk to you next time.